Let's talk more about the South Africa-Israel relationship now. Bring in Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. A very good evening to you, Minister. Good to have your time on Newzroom Afrika tonight. So, among the things that you said at the briefing today was, in fact, criticism of the Israeli ambassador to this country, describing his position as untenable. What exactly does that mean for the South African government?
It means he's making it difficult for us to coexist with him, but will allow DECO to engage with him and express our disquiet with his conduct of insulting leaders in South Africa, insulting the people of South Africa.
When you say you're going to leave it to the International Relations Department to speak to him, the Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip and the attacks by Hamas on Israel happened almost exactly a month ago to the day it will be tomorrow. How much engagement has there been between the ambassador and international relations about the situation itself and some of the comments that he said which you've found problematic?
So that is the thing, that instead of talking to us, is going publicly to insult the government, but also publicly to insult civil society organizations and people who are opposed to the atrocities that are taking place. Actually, we call them genocidal attacks on the people of Palestine. Instead of engaging with us to say, what do you propose or what is your view as South Africa, he's opting for in a manner of conduct that he behaves as if he's in his own backyard. And South Africa is not his backyard, it's the backyard of South Africans.
If the conduct of the minister, the ambassador has been so problematic, and you're saying there's going to be this engagement with the ambassador and the International Relations Department, at what point would the South African government see it fit to expel the ambassador? Because that's been one of the calls that have been made, precisely because the South African government has been clear that it stands with the people of Palestine.
So that's why I'm not the Minister of Foreign Relations. The Department of International Relations and Corporations, they know the processes they need to follow, and they know the requirements. If you ever have to get to a stage wherein we have to expel the ambassador, the department will be better placed to advise cabinet on that. They've taken all measures in place, and then the ambassador is uninhabitable. We as South Africans and the government, we do not start by condemning people without giving them an opportunity to rehabilitate themselves and their behavior. And the conversation that will be had between DECO and the Israeli ambassador will be looking at getting him to correct his ways and behave like an ambassador, a guest in another person's country.
Does it matter, though, to the South African government? How much does it matter, in fact, if he, quote, as you says, corrects his ways, when this country is clear from government's perspective that what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide against the Palestinian people? Because if that core position is unchanged, what is the point of the Israeli ambassador staying on board here?
The Israeli ambassador is not in South Africa to deal with the current conflict. The Israeli ambassadors, and like any other ambassador, he's here to look after the interests of the people, the Israelis who are in South Africa, to look at the business, the opportunities that are there to help build the relations between South Africa and Israel. And it is not limited to the conflict in currently underway in Palestine. And that's why we've retained them in the country. You know, on our part, we had earlier downgraded the mission. We recalled our ambassador, if you recall, a while ago. So his presence is not because of the current situation that is creating. There are other things that they do. So therefore, we do not want to limit his role into that. But we believe as South Africa that we have room to engage with the Israeli government, and that engagement is done through a mission. But the ambassador must conduct himself in a manner that will allow us to engage with him. Otherwise, there's no point of engaging with him.
Should Pretoria really still be engaging with the ambassador, or the country that you, as Pretoria, have said is committing genocide? Is that the caliber of country that South Africa should be engaging with and maintaining other relations with? Because even today, I don't know if you've seen, after the announcement that you were now going to be calling back South African diplomats from Tel Aviv, some said, well, it's all just talk if, for example, you don't sever trade relations with the Israelis, precisely because you have accused them of genocide.
So I've come to understand that in terms of how countries relate with each other, there are more things that you can do when you are even maintaining a contact or maintaining ties that you can do to influence that. So, and if you recall, our position in South Africa is that we are the people who want to mediate for peace, and our primary concern is not the relationship with Israel, is that there is a peaceful settlement of dispute, is that the people of Palestine and the people of Israel can coexist side by side with each other, with both feeling secure in their homeland. And that is what is important and primary to us, and that's what we quest for. But we cannot sit still and not act when there is disregard of human rights, when there's disregard of international law, when there's threats of use of nuclear armaments against armless people by a government that is on its own agenda of wanting to cleanse one population group for its own interest. We cannot stand with that, and will not do only lip service. It will not do lip service. Will not just shout and say this is going to happen. We'll act, but when you act, and because of the nature of the international, the global system, you need to also ensure that you mobilize enough partners so that your action is just not a tick box exercise, that your action can make an impact. And our position is that we continue to mobilize others who believe in us to say what is the best course of action that we must collectively take as a multilateral system to ensure that Israel desists and from its act and uphold a ceasefire, allow humanitarian aid, allow the discussion of the two-state solution to be on the table and be resolved as quickly as possible, so that the babies and the children of Palestine and their mothers and any other civilian can be free to act and exist in their own homeland without the threat of the Israeli government.
What are the chances, though, that the actions announced by Pretoria today will actually lead to progress in that regard? Because even the shuttle diplomacy of this past weekend by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, for example, who has said the American position is that the Israelis have a right and a duty to defend themselves after the Hamas attack killed those 1,400 plus people in Israel. He said, well, as the Americans, they want to see, for example, more aid going into Gaza. They're not even calling actually for a ceasefire. Even trying to get in more aid is an issue that they were unable, for example, to convince Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel to agree to a humanitarian pause. So what is the likelihood that action by South Africa would yield more results, especially what's been announced today?
And Tebekile, you'll recall that it's not action only by South Africa. There are other countries that have taken the same position that we have taken. Some have gone even a step further, and they've notified that they're severing ties. So the more the global community acts in unison as one, there will be pressure, and there will be, Israel is bound to battle. If you recall, and we use the history of our struggle for freedom, people never believed that we would be free, and they said, you can't be fighting the mighty apartheid government from exile or from with the streets of the townships and the villages. But we got the apartheid government to battle down. If you recall, the U.S. government even then did not support the sanctions against the apartheid regime of South Africa. But at some point, they had to cave in and comply with the international community. And therefore, it's not unique for the U.S. government to hold a tangent position on their own, but the international community have demonstrated time and over again that at some point, though it may take time, if they coalesce and put the necessary pressure. And those who claim to be leaders of the free world, they must also do a self-introspection to say if majority of the global community are saying that what is happening and what is taking place is not right, why should they stand and defend atrocities against women and children? And by the way, Israel has a right to defend itself against the actions of Hamas. But Israel has no right to kill the Palestinian children, women, and innocent people. They must go and fight Hamas.
They say they are fighting Hamas. The problem is that Hamas is using civilians as human shields. We've heard that supported and debunked by some who've even questioned why, for example, Israel would target a hospital, target a refugee camp as large as Jabalia last week, when majority of people there are civilians. Here in South Africa, people who support Israel say that Pretoria cannot be seen as an honest broker for peace because you've taken a side as the South African government, and therefore they don't trust this government to basically be involved in any honest way as a broker for peace. How do you respond to that?
People can be, what's the better word, can be very opportunistic in their assessment. South Africa got a brokered peace in Northern Ireland, whereas we had supported Sinn Féin, and we're very clear about our position in supporting the right of the Sinn Féin to exist in Northern Ireland. And with that, it did not mean that South Africa could not be a reliable broker. If you recall, if you go back to that period of the Northern Ireland peace talks and the disarmament, both parties were only comfortable with the armaments inspection when it was led by South Africa, and then who was the person active on that is the current President Cyril Ramaphosa. So our history and our track record of brokering peace as in an objective manner, it's undisputed, and they can say whatever they want to say as part of making themselves their conscience to sleep peacefully at night. But they know truly there must be a peace that ceasefire. There must be protection of children, women, and civilians in Palestine. Israel must stop the air attack. Humanitarian aid must be allowed to go through the South Gaza. The roads that are deemed to be safe must be made safe so that there can be corridors for humanitarian aid, including medical assistance. And those people who want to accuse us of not being objective, they know it's about their own comfort when they go to sleep, because they cannot sleep with their conscience without justifying what they want to justify, because they know their conscience bites at them at night. When a small child is suckling their mother is killed, and not even a child, a baby. When a small child, a boy, even a girl, is shot at by a missile from the airstrike from the Israeli government. When a young girl going to school cannot go to school, when an old woman who needs medical medicine for a chronic condition does not have access to medicine because the hospital has been bombed or the health center has been destroyed and there's no supply of medicine going into Gaza and the West Bank, they know that they cannot sleep with their conscience clean.
I want to go back to the broader issue of the South Africa-Israel relationship, because, again, there are these recurring calls to say, well, South Africa must basically put its money where its mouth is. I know you said on the issue of the status of the Israeli ambassador, international relations officials will advise on a way forward. This war, the bombardment of Gaza, as Israel says the mission is to kill off Hamas, has killed thousands of civilians since the 7th of October. Tomorrow will be a month to the day. At what point would the South African government say it is right to sever all ties with Israel? Is it not, for example, hypocritical to still be exchanging goods and money with what you said today is a genocidal government?
It is for that reason we have recalled all our diplomats. We are recalling all our diplomats to come back home so that we can have the consultations with them and they give us the true assessment of what's happening. Because what we're seeing, we are seeing it on television. We want to have a deeper understanding from them. That's why they are coming, all of them, the South African mission, people deployed in the South African mission in Tel Aviv are coming back to South Africa for the consultation. And after those consultations, we will make we'll evaluate the situation and make the right decisions.
And what have the ambassadors, or your diplomats rather, in Israel been telling you so far? Like I've said, it's been 4 weeks now. What sort of information have they been sending back to Pretoria about the situation?
They have been telling us that the situation is dire. They have been telling us that the humanitarian corridors must be open. They have been telling us that the ceasefire must be held, and that's why South Africa made a statement even yesterday at the UN, and also that's why we've been voting, and we appreciate that the global community has voted in unison, except for Israel and the United States of America, who have not voted to support a ceasefire to allow humanitarian aid to go in. I hope with the failure of the attempts by the shuffle diplomacy by Secretary Blinken will then woken up the United States government to say what they're dealing with is not their ally, it's not their spoiled child, it's a killing machine, and that must be stopped so that there is no Holocaust during our watch. There is no Holocaust in the next generations or even in the current generations.
To what extent, Minister, is Pretoria having to be, shall we say, measure its response, measure your anger, your outrage at what is going on in Gaza because perhaps of retaliation possibly from Israel's allies, the United States, which we've been talking to you about the AGOA arrangement, for example, the Europeans, though the EU, we know, is split on what should happen in the Middle East at the moment. How much of those dynamics are playing into how you respond to your relationship with Israel?
I'm sure, Tembekile, and your viewers, you already know that South Africa, we are a sovereign state. Our views are not managed somewhere else, and we take decisions in the national interest of South Africa and in what are the goals and objectives of this country. So our decisions on the steps we take or the way we go is not influenced by any other person, but the South African position and its international relations posture, which is our national interest, a better Africa and a better world. And for us, that's what guides us. We're not guided by anything. And as it relates to AGOA, we have always insisted, and even during the time that the media and some commentators were thinking South Africa is going to be booted out of AGOA, we have insisted that the AGOA is not going to be extended. We have insisted that the USA needs AGOA more than we need AGOA, in actual fact. So it's not only in our interest to have AGOA going, it's in the interest of the US that AGOA is not only extended, but it's enhanced, because with the decisions that we've taken, if you recall, some countries in the continent have already taken decisions that they're no longer exporting raw minerals such as lithium, and a number of them, we could go into a list of those countries which are saying they're no longer going. And we in South Africa, we are evaluating also our position in terms of exporting those raw materials, and we're saying we want them beneficiated in this country. So if the US wants to sever ties with Africa, it must know that Africa will not be short of friends, and it will seek friends. The question is that can the US afford to sever ties with Africa?
Are those friends the Chinese?
I'm saying we have friends. There's plenty. The globe is how many countries again in the globe? So it cannot be one. We've got
the Russians and the Chinese?
We've got the Germans who are our friends.
But the Germans appear to be moving lock in step with the Americans on the issue of Israel and Palestine.
No, what I'm saying, I'm giving a context that if America wants to sever ties with Africa, there are many countries in the world that we can partner with to develop the continent of Africa together. There's country of South Africa together. So the discussion about our relationship with the US is not at play. Our relationship with the US is solid on the things that we are mutually agreeing on, and they respect the fact that we differ when we differ in line with our national interest and our national object, our country's objective of a better Africa and a better world, and will prioritize South Africa's national interest, Africa's interest, and the interest of a peaceful global society.
Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, good to have your time tonight. Thank you.